Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, we're right back on Project Ruby today, and today's project, power windows for the quarter glass. Now, as many of you know, Ruby is a sport coupe or a post car, or some people call them a sedan. It has a post, okay, and there's a window frame around the glass on the doors. So we are going to be doing this on the sport coupe model or the sedan model. Now, if you have a hardtop, which there was way more hardtops made than sport coupes, it's the mechanism inside is a little different. It's more complicated, actually. This is super simple. There's almost no runners or rails or anything in there. So if you're going to try it for our hardtop, it's going to be very similar what we're going to be doing to the regulator, but you may have some slight differences as far as the window mechanism going up and down. So just be mindful of that. Sometime in the future, if I have time, I'll go ahead and do one. I do have a parts car that is a hardtop, so I may be able to do one on that and show you guys how to do it for a hardtop as well. But today, we're doing it on Ruby, the Sport Coupe. So let's jump in here and get to work on it. Okay, on the doors, there's actual physical stops that stop the glass from going too low, and you can adjust those. On the rear quarters, there are no stops. What it is actually the sector on the window regulator runs out of teeth, and there's a flat spot with no teeth, and you run into that, and that's what stops the glass from going too low. So what you need to do is, before you do anything, crank your windows all the way down and determine what height that glass is at, because we're gonna need to know that later. Take a picture with your phone or something so you can duplicate that height. So I have this one set right here, and it is a little adjustable later, but not much. So you need to really, we're gonna need that dimension later. So as you can see, it's just right at the base of the two pieces here. So it's just right there. And that's where I'm gonna adjust mine. So make sure you make note of that. Okay, the first thing we need to do is get the regulators out. So, and the good thing about this project is you don't have to take the glass out, unlike the doors. Remember how many times I had to take the door or the glass out of the doors to facilitate all that testing and everything. So what I've done here is I've lowered the glass down till I can get to the clip to release it from the regulator, the glass from the regulator, and then I just put a squeeze clamp right here so it kind of bottoms out. And then I did a squeeze clamp here to hold the glass, and then I put a squeeze clamp to hold the squeeze clamp to the window, the drip edge, rain drip edge. So that'll hold it right there. This glass isn't very heavy, so it's super simple. You can figure out some way of doing it similar to this or any way really, but as long as the glass doesn't fall, that's all that matters. So let's go inside and remove the clip, and then we can get that window regulator out. Okay, so here's the clip, and all it does is slide over the pin that's sticking out of the glass. So all you have to do is push it off. I've had this one off a few times. You may have to take a screwdriver and just tap and push it out once you figure out which way it comes off. I'm going to just jiggle this one. I'm going to kind of squeeze the arm back up against the glass and release it. I think I can get it off there. There we go. So we just have the clip. You can see how it's made. And then since we have the glass held, then we can just release it, and that's it. There's a channel back here, and there's a channel up here, and that's basically it that holds this glass in place. So the glass is secure. Now we can take the bolts out and go ahead and take the regulator out. Okay, now you need to have both regulators out to do this because we are going to swap sides. So the regulator that's on the driver's side will go to the passenger side, and the regulator that's on the passenger side will go to the driver's side. I know it sounds strange, but we're actually going to invert these. So they're normally mounted with the window crank up and the spring below it. We are actually going to reverse that. So the motor, the power motor will hang down and the spring will be up. And we're going to move over to this panel right here. I have this cut off the donor cart, and I'll show you exactly how this is going to work. Okay, this is off the driver's side. It's off the interior panel where the window regulator attaches. I happened to cut it off when I was cutting the quarter panel off for Ruby. So I've got the regulator behind it, and you can see there's 6 holes along here, but only the 2 right here are being used. And this is the normal configuration, which you'll find it. The window crank goes right here, but we're not going to do it that way. So let me flip this over real quick, and I'll show you how we're going to handle this. Okay, so I've got the panel. This would be inside the door jamb area, or where the glass goes, as it were, and it was sitting like this. What we're going to do is we're going to reverse this just like this, and since we're flopping sides, this is going to work. If we didn't flop sides, then the sector and everything would be wrong since we're turning it upside down. The important part here, and this is, I don't know how it worked out this way, but what we're going to do, we're not going to use the upper holes. We're going to use these two center holes that weren't normally used, and that is going to be right here. All right, so this will actually bolt onto those factory center holes right here. And the key to all of this is this pivot point right here where this arm goes. It doesn't matter if it's on the hardtop or the sport coupe. Where this pivot point is what matters. And by chance, you see I've drawn a line here. When we have it in the correct orientation, just like this, you can see that line lines right up with a pivot point for the arm, right? Now if we flop it and use those holes up here, we go just like that. If I can find the holes and line it up. Now this pivot point is the exact same spot, because it is important how that arm moves, especially on the sport coupe, because there's no rails or anything to guide the window. This arm actually helps guide the window. So that just happened to be, I don't know why those holes are there, but it worked out perfectly for me here. So that's what we're going to do. So the next step we need to do, just like you saw in the other video, we're going to drill out these rivets and pull this off and get ready to put the motor on here. Now, we have to remove the spring, we have to get this off, and I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to put a link in the description, and actually I'll put a little thumbnail up at the end of the video so you guys can go and watch the other video I did where I did power windows. Almost all of it's going to be very similar to what we're going to be doing here today, so I'm going to speed through this a little bit. Let me knock this out real quick. You must remove the spring first before you start any other work. As you cut these rivets off, this thing's going to tomahawk chop you and it's going to hurt. So let me take care of this real quick and I'll bring you right back. Okay, we got the spring out, so we can go ahead and remove the window crank mechanism gear. And that went on the underside right here, it was riveted on, and that shaft went into that bushing hole right there. We know this is going to be in the way too, so just like the other job, we need to cut that off. So I just took a cutoff wheel and sliced right along the edge there, and we got that removed. So now basically this area is ready for start modifying it to accept the power window motor. But before we can do that, we have to separate this arm from the window sector gear. Now, luckily, the window sector gear is not keyed to this shaft. You can see the shape of this shaft. It just has a round hole in it. So if we can separate it, we can go ahead and get these to slide independently. Now, the spring goes on this shaft right here, and it is keyed, and the window arm is keyed to it. So they move together. But the only thing that holds these two together is this rivet right here, and there is a dimple. I don't know if you guys can see that dimple right there. That dimple dimples into a hole on the sector gear. So we need to drill out the rivet, and then we need to drill out that dimple. Unfortunately, we can't drill all the way through because it's right here. You can't get it into a clear open spot, but we can drill this rivet out, so we're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to drill down onto this dimple until it's gone, until these both move independently. And the reason for that is, now remember, we're using the next set of holes down, right? They're about that far down from where the other one was. And if we don't change this orientation, your window will go down too far and fall out of the track. So we need to change this gear, since the gear is actually the stop to stop the window from going down too far, like we mentioned earlier. So let's get this drilled out. Let's get this dimple drilled till this thing will move, and then we can move on to getting the power window motor on this thing. Okay, I decided to just go ahead and use a cutoff wheel and just slice along here and cut the head off that rivet, and then we'll just drive it out. Okay, we got that rivet out. So all we have to do is go ahead and drill that dimple, and these should slide independently. All right, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch bit. Feels like it's about the right size. Feels like we made it through. All right, let's see if this thing moves here. Okay, I got it to move. You can see the original spot. Here is the rivet hole right here, and the dimple hole's right up back. You can barely see it inside there. So it does move independently now, so we can adjust it to whatever we want to do. So let's move over to getting the power window motor attached to this frame. Okay guys, now we're ready to get the motor attached to the window regulator. And this motor, I'm not going to go over everything I did in the other video. I'll put, like I said, I'll put a thumbnail at the end, a link in the description. But I bought a 2-pack of these off Amazon. It was like $39. So they're super cheap. But in that other video, it has all the description and the information you need to find these motors and how I figured it out and everything else. So super cheap. This is a really good way of doing it. So what we need to do, just like the other time, we need to attach this motor just like that. Now this is the inside sheet metal of the car right here. The window crank normally stuck out right here and you cranked it, but we're going to put the motor towards the outside, and that way the glass can clear and there won't be any problem. The one thing you need to know is you can actually clock this motor straight down, but the wiring harness gets kind of close to the bottom of the quarter panel right there. So I cocked mine just a little bit, about like that. So you want to cock it just a little bit so you get a little more room at the bottom, and then it's easier to plug and unplug the wiring harness as well, because you're not trying to work straight up and down. And there's an opening in the car right about here that allows you to reach in and do that, and also allows you to reach in and remove the motor if it goes out on you. And so the next step is to figure out how to get this motor attached to this. And like in the other video, we're going to do exactly the same thing. It's just going to be slightly different. So we need a plate in here to support this shaft. Now, this shaft does not turn. The gear turns on the shaft, but the shaft does not turn. And it's important to remember this shiny wheel around here, it turns with the gear. So when you're making your bracket to screw to, it can't interfere with that, because that actually sticks up a little bit past this face here. So it's not like you can just put it right up close, because as soon as you tighten it down, it's going to bind it up, okay? So I've already made a template for the motor plate, and it looks something like that. And we're going to cut that out of steel, and then we're just going to take a hole saw and hole saw a hole in it, and that'll work. And then the other plate we need to make is the one that supports that shaft. Okay, so we're going to clock that a little bit like that, and we're going to have to make a little plate, and I've already come up with some templates. Goes just like that, I think, or maybe like this. Yeah, fits like that. So it's going to be cut off right about here, but I'm going to use this to cut a piece of steel. Now, I'll drill a 5/16 hole, and the hole needs to be cleaned up a little bit. I think that's a metric shaft, but you barely touch it with a file and it'll fall right in. So let me go ahead and make this plate right here. I'm going to go ahead and make this plate, and I'll bring you back and we'll get them fitted on here. Okay, so I got the piece made, I got the other piece made, and this actually needs to slip down inside so it's flush all the way across here. So I think I've got this one just about right. Now, since it goes down inside here, if this area right here is too long, what you're going to do is you're going to force those gears too tight together, okay? So you want a little bit of a gap in there. We're going to tack it, and you'll eventually weld it permanently. But you can tack that gap in, weld that gap in, no problem. So, but if you have this pushing this shaft over, what's it's going to do, it's going to cram that gear into the sector gear so tightly that it's going to be binding. It'll still operate, but it'll be grinding and kind of clunk, 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 and you don't want that. So you want a little bit of a gap in here so it can just find its spot normally. And then when you tack it, it's going to pull a little bit, and it'll be just about right. I mean, this is not precision gearing here. We're just raising it lower to window, right? So we got that one worked out. It looks like it's going to work out really good. All I will have to do is lay a plate across there, and it sits flush. Remember, it sits down inside there. So we're going to get that tacked in there just like that. Now, the other one I've already made up too, and I drilled the hole. This is an 1 3/4 hole, and it sits on here just like this. Now, you don't have to follow the shape of the motor like I did. It could just be a general shape, but I did that because that's who I am. So right now, it fits pretty good, as you can see, but it's getting a little bit close right here. So what I need to do is grind a little bit off here, right here, So that little bump clears, and then that'll sit down inside there. Once we get it sit down inside there, we're gonna go ahead and mark and drill the location for the screw holes. And then this plate will be attached to here so we can start figuring out how to get all this welded together. I'm gonna get that little knob ground off, and then we'll get this lined up so this lines up over that hole really nice right there. And then we can get the screws in and get this bolted to it and move on to the next step. Okay, I've got the plate clamped on here, and we're going to use a 5/32 drill bit, and we're only going to use 4 holes on here. We're not going to use the top one. We're going to use one here and one here, one here and one here. And the reason for that is, remember, this motor has to come off. You know, it could burn up sometime or whatever, and you need to be able to reach around there and get this motor off. So if we use this top hole, it's actually up inside here, and you're not going to be able to get to it. So I'm just going to mark the spot with the drill and then go over to the drill press and drill these out. Okay, so I got the screws in, and these happen to be the mounting screws that come with these motors. And eventually I will go ahead and tack these screws onto this plate so they're more like studs. And that way when you go to service it, have to remove it or whatever, all you have to do is take the nuts off, pull it off, put the new one on, put the nuts on, you're good to go. You're not trying to reach around there with the screwdriver and hold it and hold these screws. So that's gonna work out really good. So we have all our parts, because I went ahead and cut a piece of 1.5" black pipe, this 1.5" ID, and I made a C shape out of it. You can see that right there. And that will eventually be welded to the mounting plate right here. And then it will be welded to the window regulator bracket. But let me give you a little bit of warning here. Now, while you're mocking up and doing everything, use the same motor over and over again, because when I was doing it, I got this one a little hot, and there's like a little plastic or a rubber ring around here that kind of seals in the grease, and it got hot enough so that ring kind of melted and some grease came out. So this is my prototype motor, I guess we'll call it. And so I'll probably get a brand new one and put this one on the shelf for a spare or whatever, because I did get it hot a few times while you're tacking and everything. I didn't weld with it together, but I did tack, and it got hot enough to melt that little gasket in there. And I don't want any janky parts on in Ruby. So for another 20 bucks, I have no problem getting another motor. So what we're gonna do now is go ahead and over to the welding table, and what we need to do is, for one, we'll have that spacer in there. We'll have that just like that, and then this piece goes on. And the first piece to go on will be this piece right here. We need to get this centered up, get the distance this way and that way, and then go ahead and get it tacked. And then all we're gonna do is tack it up, and then we can move over to getting that little piece of C-shaped pipe onto here, and then attaching that to there once we get it clocked properly. So let's move over to the welding table. I'll set that up. We're just gonna bust through it really quick. Okay, I just got a piece of steel across there and a couple of clothespins to hold that flush across there. We're just going to get it tacked. Okay, we got that on there really nice. I'll get a couple more tacks back here in the back. Once I'm sure everything's right, I'll go ahead and do more tacking and welding, but I always do tacks first, because a lot of times I got to cut them apart and move something. So the next step is to get the C-shaped piece that we made on to the window regulator bracket. And the reason we don't attach it to the motor first is because if we get it orientated wrong right through here, then it's going to hit on the sector gear, and the sector gear travels through here. So what we want to do is set the motor on here and figure all that out where it's going to sit just right. Then I'll mark it with a Sharpie, and then we'll get it tacked on here. So let me go ahead and get all that figured out, and then we'll get this tacked up, and then we can get the motor tacked onto that piece, and then we're about ready for some testing. Okay guys, I got it laid up and clocked just like I want it. I held it up into the car, and I figured out about what angle I wanted this. And now I'm going to go ahead and just tack it, and then I'm going to test fit it to make sure it fits properly. Then we can move forward with getting serious about welding. But for right now, I'm going to tack it right there, so that C is welded to this piece. Now we're going to weld that C shaped down to this bracket, so it's all one piece. So let me take care of that. We're going to go test fit it, make sure I got this thing clocked correctly. and then we are just about ready to do some testing. Okay, we got it all tacked together, so we're ready to do some testing to make sure it moves freely before we move on. Seems like it went pretty good that direction. Looks good right there. So I didn't hear any binding or any grinding or anything, so we're good there. And I do have it all the way to the lowest spot, so it went and bottomed out where there's no teeth. So that puts us right perfect position for the next step, which is figuring out what angle this arm needs to be at before we tack it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to tack that right to the sector gear so they move together. But we have to reinstall this back in the car to figure that out. Okay, so we got the window regulator installed. Now these are the original holes, and the window crank came out right here. We are using the center 2 holes. Remember, we flopped them over. This is the window regulator off the passenger side. We're working on the driver's side. So they've been reversed, and we're using these holes right here. We will have to drill 2 new holes for the lower mounts. There's no holes down here. So we've got it installed. I've got the glass in, and it's sitting too high. But remember, all I wanted was to get the glass connected to the arm, and then since this arm is no longer connected to the sector yet, we're going to reconnect it. Now we can just simply force that arm down until the glass is the height we want. That's what we're going to do right now. I don't have the clip in there, so I'm going to hold them together and just kind of bump it down. It's still pretty stiff. I kind of overshot it there a little bit. Try to raise it up. And that's just about right there. So what you do is you just raise and lower this arm until you get the glass at the height you want. And that's just about right there. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and pull the glass back up and hold it up out of the way. Carefully remove the window regulator. Now this arm is pretty stiff, right? You saw how hard it was for me to move. If yours is a little looser, you have to be very careful so it doesn't change position while you're pulling it out before you can go over and tack it in place. And that's what we're going to do next. So let me go ahead and get the window regulator out, and then we'll go back over to the bench and we'll talk about getting this tacked together and then doing some final testing and see how this thing's going to work out. Okay, we got it back out. Nothing moved, and this thing's so stiff there was no chance it was going to move. But I don't know if you guys can tell, but see this line right here? Now that's the original location of this arm. It was pointed way back this way. And the reason it's so far off, don't be alarmed, is because remember, this one belongs on the other side of the car. We flopped them from the passenger side. Now we're working the passenger side window regulator. We're using it on the driver's side, and we flipped it upside down. So it's going to be way out of whack. So don't think that you did something wrong. Now, what the next step is to go ahead and clean this up right here and put a small tack right here, just a little 1/4 inch tack. And the reason I put it right there is because if it's wrong, when we go put it back in to test, I can put a cutoff wheel or something right there and grind that tack and then realign this and then tack it again. When we're all done, it'll have a tack here, and a tack here. You know, pretty good sized beads to hold this all together, but for right now, just a small tack is all we'll need. So let me go ahead and take care of that, and we'll get it back in the car and we'll do some testing. Okay guys, we're on the passenger side. I wanted to do the driver's side, the window regulator we are currently working on. But the window channel over there is just, it's falling apart. I can't get it to go up inside there. When we stripped Ruby down, it was really crumbling when it came out. And so it's really not usable for testing. I do have new stuff on order with OPGI, but if you guys ordered anything recently, everything seems to be on back order. So it's on back order. I don't have the new stuff here. But luckily, the passenger side, the channel was just good enough for me to get it back up inside there, and so we can do some testing. So we'll go ahead and test it on this side, and then we'll finish up with everything else on the other side. So let's go ahead and test it going down. Seems to be working really well on the way down. Let's go up. Now I do have the spring installed, so you know, the spring really does help kind of modulate or regulate it, so it's nice and smooth. So the window does hit just about perfect on the way up and on the way down. But we could use some adjustment, especially when the new stuff comes in. We may have, it's going to be a lot tighter obviously, so we're going to have to adjust it. So that's what we're going to do next, is working on getting the mounting hole set up. Now, right now we only have 2 holes that's holding it on the other side. We need to drill 2 new holes down lower and then slot those a little bit so we can move that window regulator and get the height and the angle and everything just right. So let's move over and take care of that right now. Okay, so we got the arm tacked in place right there, and I went ahead and rotated the sector gear all the way around till the arm would be in the full up position, and that makes it easier to put the spring on because the spring is at its tightest at the lower position. So we're going to put that on there right there. Just grab it with some pliers, kind of wrench it around here, put it right back on, and so that's done. So now we need to locate where these 2 holes are going to be. Now these are the lower holes. They used to be the upper holes. So now what we need to do is make a template. So that's what I did. And I poked some holes right where those are, and I got the bolts. And I'm just going to thread those right in there like that. And then I just took an awl and I found where the other holes are and I poked some holes. So what we can do is now transfer this over to the car, put this up on the car, and then mark the 2 locations, drill the 5/16 holes, and we'll be that much closer to getting a permanent installation on this thing. So let's move back into the car. We'll get these holes drilled, and then we're going to have to slot some holes to make this thing have a little bit of adjustability. Okay, so these are the 2 upper mounting holes, and we need to drill 2 lower mounting holes. So we're going to set the template on here. Try to hold it flush. Just like that, and then we'll just take a Sharpie and put a little dot right where the next holes need to be. Now, we need to slot these holes. Now, all these holes were slotted to give you some movement on that window regulator, so I want to do the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up slotting these holes each direction. So we're going to go left to right. So I'm going to put a small line right here, and we're going to drill on each side of that on the tip right there. So we're going to drill a pilot hole first, and then 5/16 on each one, and then we're going to take a file or a burr tool and go ahead and get that cleaned up. Okay, let me get a burr tool in here real quick. We'll make those nice and oval, and then we need to modify one of the upper holes as well. Okay, so I got the window regulator back in. I've got it bolted at the upper bolt and one of the new slotted holes we just put in. And you can see the threaded hole right there. Now this sheet metal rises up right here. So we're gonna have to make a spacer. It's probably about 5/16 tall. That's no big deal. A little bit longer bolt and a little spacer back behind there, piece of cake. So the next step we need to do for sure though is make this adjustable. So when that glass comes up and makes its final move into its resting spot all the way up, that it's sitting and seated just right so there's no whistling, no rain, no water can get through or anything. So we have some adjustment right now, but if you watch this threaded hole, you see it goes out of sight, right? So that is the very bottom spot it can go. So we need to actually make that so it'll go up. So what we need to do is slot this hole like that, and just on that plane right there. So it almost comes up against this raised area, but it doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole right there, and then I'm going to slot that so we have a little bit of adjustment. Okay, I made a little spacer and put it in there. I found a little bit longer 1/4-20 bolt and put it in. You want to make sure the bolt's not too long because the sector does pass by right behind this bolt, and if it's too long it's going to hit. So we got that one slotted, got that one taken care of, and as you can see now we've got quite a bit of adjustment, so I'm hoping this is going to work out great once I get all the new channel and everything in there, and it's going to work out perfect. Won't know that till we mock that up, but I think we're really close right here. Let's go ahead and go back over to the other side and do some final testing and see how good it works, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Okay guys, we got the passenger side just like the driver's side. We slotted this hole, so we're good to go. I even got the spacer in and the bolts, so all 4 bolts are in just like it's going to be permanently. And I want to show you what the adjustment will do for you, so you can see how it's rocking and see how much movement we get. Just a little bit of movement on the bolt gets you a lot of movement up here. So when you're adjusting it, let's say the top right here hits up here before this back tucks in all the way. Then you can get some adjustment on it. So I'm going to go ahead and run this thing up and then get the regulator in the right spot. Then I'm going to tighten it all up, and then we'll do some final testing on it, do a couple of close-ups of it going up and down. And I think we're done with this one. Power windows on the quarter glass. Really, I think this thing's working out great. It goes up and down. Everything's working just right, just the way I was thinking it would. And I'm really happy. So let's do a couple of close-ups of it going up and down where the glass is hitting in the channel, and we'll wrap this one up. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up this video on getting power windows for Ruby's quarter glass. And just like at the doors, we did it for $24 or $31 if you buy the plug too. So this wasn't really that complicated. Now the doors seemed a lot more difficult, maybe because I was just figuring that all out then. But you know, really all we did on this one, we took the window regulator off the passenger side and flipped it upside down and used it on the driver's side, realigned the arm on the sector, and then put a motor on it just like we did on the other video. And really, it was that simple. It just took a little while to figure out. It took me 2 days to figure it out. You know, it took me about 3 hours to shoot this video, but it took me 2 days to figure this out. But it works great. I'm really happy the way it's working. And I really hope that you guys want to tackle this job. You'll use this video, and it'll help you a lot. Now, the hardtop is going to be slightly different because it has a different channel in there because the glass has to come up and meet the door glass just perfectly to get that weather strip seal so it doesn't whistle and no water gets in. But it's really almost identical, so I'm quite sure you guys can handle it. Someday if I get a chance, I'll figure out how to do a video on that one as well. But for now, Ruby's got some power windows all the way around. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next one.